Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is time for City Business. That means the City Council has been meeting, and that means Michael Halley is in the house, as you can see if you're watching on FMC, and I hope you got that clear throat away, because that's what we can do conveniently on radio. We have our ways. But joining us, Michael Halley from the 4th Ward here, the 4th Ward of the City Council. This is James Moore, and we bring you city news, city business of the City Hall haps every Tuesday lunchtime, Thursday 6:30 p.m. following each session, and then the following Monday breakfast, 6:30 a.m. And I'm also teaching adjunct faculty over there at MUM, so gosh, there's a lot of busy people. I see Mr. FMC behind the camera. Boy, what a sight. And Michael, before the camera, how you doing, sir?
Good. Glad to be here as always.
Good to see you. So what's, I know we've got a bus through, and there's a plenty, I think this wasn't the shorty, was it?
It was not as short as they have been. It was, we had a long discussion about a particular issue that I'll get to here in a bit, but it's a general review of our regular City Council meeting for November 24th, 2014. We had a couple of public forum appearances. First was Adam Plaguey, director of Fairfield Economic Development Association. He and Anna Bruin, who also works part-time for FIDA, have been working very hard after the housing needs assessment was done. Mm-hmm. They've been working with the Housing Task Force, which is comprised by one council member, Jessica Ledger-Kalin, and then a bunch of volunteers, including Adam and Anna.
Great.
And so they had some recommendations to bring to the council.
And you mean comprised, right?
That's what I meant. What did I say?
You said compromised, and
I did? I said compromised?
That was either a Freudian slip or I just wanted to make sure. If it was that was, I wanted to be clear.
No, it wasn't.
That's what I figured. So, all right. So we're talking Jessica?
Jessica, and then some volunteers from around the community.
Excellent.
And had several meetings, met with some contractors, had a gentleman come who's worked on different ways to encourage development, rehabilitation of houses, etc. Came, I believe it was a month ago, to City Hall. So basically just deeply investigating options of how we can spur both new development and rehabilitation of what we have. So more to come in the agenda. There are 2 items that we discussed. We also heard from Beth Williams of a new co-op. It's local food is really becoming a hot topic. There was just an article released, I believe, in the Des Moines Register yesterday about the growing economic advantages of local food production.
Or boonhood, as we say in the neighborhood.
Yep.
Actually, nobody says that, but...
Well, you just did.
I did.
Yeah.
And it is a neighborhood.
There you go. And the potential for actually more growth and more local money staying local than had previously been thought. If actual food production was done here in Iowa, the food that we Iowans eat, not just production but preparation, could be kept local, that's huge economic development possibilities. So there's a new food hub being talked about. So more on that as it unfolds. Beth just wanted to come and tell us a little bit about what's going on, but it's kind of a supplement to the indoor farmers market. I wouldn't say competition, but something that will help local growers through the winter.
And as you mentioned, a hub too. I think Jan Swinton, and so some good activity.
Yep, some very good activity. And there'll be more to talk about as things develop.
Great.
We moved on to resolutions, action items, and ordinances. This was nice. Friends of yours, the Readers.
Yes.
They own property over by that piece of land that was donated to the city. The Natties had donated a piece of land to the city, and the city needed access to that land. So we worked out an agreement with property owners in the neighborhood to use their driveway, which is kind of gravelly, alley-wide type of situation. It leads to, I think, 3 properties, to get access to the north portion of the Natty property, which will be developed into long and short grass prairie, forest, wetland. It's all conservation. It's a conservation easement. And so the plans are really inspiring and beautiful to think what it will become, but it's going to take 10, 20 years to get it there. But just to give people access to that as another city amenity, we needed some road to get to that. So the agreement is the city will maintain that street, will plow it in the winter, which it currently doesn't 'cause it's not considered a city
Private.
street. Yep. We'll patch the potholes. We'll basically maintain it. Not the entire, but up until the north part of the Natty property, which does go past the Reader's property. So,
Which is also where Singing Cedar School is.
Senior Center School, yep. So that's good news for anyone using that. And then the other good news is that now there'll be a little parking lot on that north side of Natty property.
Which has been an issue, I know, back there for
them
and people.
Yeah, it'll be public parking. And eventually, as we develop that into the prairie and the forest and all that, it'll be a really sweet place to go out and picnic, take a nice walk.
Sweet.
Yes.
And, Robert Reeder also has a show here on KRUU, 11 a.m. Thursdays and 4 p.m. Fridays about the music. Great musician as well. And Annie, of course, runs the Singing Cedar School there. Good friends, but also good stuff. Yeah. Bob also is the chair of the programming committee for Fairfest and Fairfield Musicians Club, and a lot of good folks in this town.
Yep.
And he's one of them.
And I believe it was very easy for the Parks and Rec to work with them on this. And
great.
Kind of, you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours. And it's a really amicable agreement. Works for everyone.
Perfect.
Yep. All right. So we moved into one of the two housing discussions. And this one actually took a long time, but I'll try to condense it. So the city has the opportunity to apply for community development block grant for owner-occupied housing rehabilitation. Now, the program would provide about $300,000 in real money to rehabilitate 8 local homes, but it needs a local match. Now, we have some local banks and the Rotary pitched in to contribute, I believe it's $4,000. But in order to really be competitive for this grant application, the city needed to contribute $20,000. Now, FIDA had an understanding the city had already agreed, but we hadn't. So the council was debating it last night. Yet some council members, like John Revelinsky, felt that using public funds for only specific houses is, in one sense, unfair. Like, why these properties and not these others? And the way the grant works is you have to pick a neighborhood. So the neighborhood that was picked is 9th to 12th north of Gear.
Okay.
Basically that area, and then a couple blocks southeast of that, because that's an area where there's some real need for rehabilitation on houses. And the grant is specific. It's not adding additions or upgrades. It's basically fixing things like roofs, maybe replacing windows, adding insulation, fixing foundations, nuts and bolts kind of things that some people just simply can't afford. So literally. So you either let them work it out themselves, and some of this stuff just falls into deeper disrepair, which again brings the whole neighborhood down, or when you there's some precedent that when you fix some houses in a neighborhood, neighbors will sometimes start taking their house up a notch as well. It's just some sort of, I don't want to call it peer pressure, but kind of a social
inspiration.
Yeah. And so, if people see 8 houses in the neighborhood being fixed, then they might start bringing some of their properties up. But the debate, that's a good point about, well, why are we putting funds into these 8 homes rather than some other homes? And so,
but I mean, the city does favor certain businesses or different. I mean, there are exceptions, or there are singled out things.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it never happens.
Yeah, exactly. And in a sense, our contribution is relatively small to get, if we win, this larger amount of money. That's a federal grant.
And of course, that's part of this equation.
Exactly. So if we find, where's the $20,000 going to come from? Well, the only place that it could come from would be the lost funds from 2015-2016 fiscal year, which will start July of 2015. But with the current breakdown I explained last week, with the way that the lost funds are allocated, that comes out of the portion that would go towards the community betterment, which is the nonprofits who come. So it's really not ideal in a sense to take it from that. At this point, it's only funding we have. Maybe if we sell Logan Apartments, maybe there'll be some funding from that.
Don't count on it, guys. Trust me.
Exactly. We talked about that, but we're getting closer to maybe selling it, but not for nearly the amount that was talked about in the past. But I don't even like to say that because it's been said 1,000 times.
Well, no. Fairfest was like directly not a recipient of that
Exactly.
direct thing. So
Yeah.
I was being smug in my own way, quietly.
But
over
it's
here.
true. Yeah, a lot of people though, besides Fairfest, were told,
course.
"Oh, if we sell this, we'll have the funds by a certain individual."
And it will sell eventually.
Yeah, but it's not as much as we had hoped. I was going to make a point. Now it's
Oh, well, you were talking about this being pulled from the lost funds.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So in the future, now I'm going to get to another proposal for another type of incentive for housing development, and that will include a portion of set-aside funds for this kind of purpose. So in the future, we would have a mechanism to fund these kind of things, these rehabilitations, especially for low to moderate income housing, that would not come from local option sales tax or any other existing revenue source. It would come from a new revenue source. I'll get to that in a minute. And that will be, in a sense, much more ideal. So at this point, we've penciled it in to come out of loss for next year unless some other funding source comes along, and went ahead with it just because the need for rehabilitation of homes in town is dire, this neighborhood especially. The city had done this exact same grant years past, and it worked well. So we wanted to leverage our 20K to get 300. It seems like it's still a good thing to do. Now, federal grants do come with federal stipulations, which sometimes makes things cost more than they need to. But in the end, it's a positive. We all acknowledge that it's not an ideal grant situation. Why have to pick a neighborhood? Why can't you just pick homes all over town? And why only 8? You know, there are so many little stipulations that make it the way it is, but at the same time, it's a worthwhile endeavor. The council voted unanimously that we would move forward, so I guess the council felt that it was a worthwhile endeavor. Do you need to get that?
No, but that gives me a good opportunity to say you're listening to solar-powered KRUU-FM, broadcasting from the Cultural District here in Fairfield, the voices of Fairfield, Iowa, and beyond. We are listening and sharing news of city haps from City Council Michael Halley in the house. Michael also has a show, Reasonable Alternative, with Matt Molyneux every Friday at 8 p.m. And this City Haps update is brought to you Tuesdays at lunchtime, 12:30, then Thursday, 6:30 p.m., the following Monday at 6:30 a.m. And back to the points at hand.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to a committee report from the Economic Development Committee and the Property Committee. We met jointly to discuss the housing policy. I'm going to talk about briefly, it'll be more in depth next time, but the proposal to incentivize new development is basically a TIF program. Now, let's say there was a developer had a lot of land and they had the financial backing and they could prove that they had the financial backing to move forward. One roadblock for them to move forward is infrastructure cost, putting in roads, water lines, sewer. It can be very expensive, and by the time they calculate that back into the house price, it gets to be too expensive for people to purchase. So the city can create an urban renewal district and create a TIF district for that area and capture the increment and use essentially it's a borrowed amount at first that gets paid back by the new property tax once it's developed to put in the infrastructure. But we had developed a way that it's actually the developer pays for the infrastructure, not the city. The city doesn't borrow a dime. The developer pays for it and gets paid back through the increment. So there's no risk or no cost to the city, but it does help the developer with that cost. So in a sense, their own development, their own properties that they're developing pays for the infrastructure, and it's also an incentive for them to build quickly. So once they lay the infrastructure in, they don't get any payment until they have properties that are on the property tax roll. So instead of having that situation where there's empty lots sitting there, they're going to want to move quickly and get properties built and get them occupied. So it's a win-win because it helps the developer, but it doesn't cost taxpayers anything. The small amount that we would spend on lawyer fees just to create the urban renewal district would have to be paid back by the developer if they didn't move on it in, say, 4 or 5 years. So then we really covered our bases. There's absolutely zero cost to the city on this, but there are 2 developers, one on the south side of town, one on the north side of town, who I believe will move forward if we get this policy in place. So It's actually kind of novel. It's not something we picked up from someone else. We essentially invented this, and it's similar to the what we did with the American Hotel. They wanted something up front, but we worked it out where there was no cost to the city. We didn't give them anything. We just abated their property tax a certain amount, but we never abated 100%. So from the beginning, there was an addition to the tax base from having that property out there. So it worked for them to help them get it built, but it also worked in the favor of the city and the taxpayers. So anytime you can create a situation like that is a win-win. And there's such a need right now for affordable housing and some new housing in town that we feel that this is the time.
Big time.
Yep. And then a portion of that, about 10, 15, depending on the project, percent of the TIF will actually be set aside for low to moderate income housing programs like what we're doing with this community block grant. So we won't have to take the money out of Lost or any other place. It'll be set aside. In a sense, those projects will be funded by the new development project. So really, there's so many wins in this. It's really well thought out. So hats off to Adam Plaguey and Anna Bruin, who really put a lot of thought. A couple of smart people. It's good to have some smart people.
Two of my favorites, no question. We worked with Anna a long time with Scott Tim, and Adam's just doing a heck of a job.
He's really doing a great job. All right, we had our second reading of the wastewater treatment usage increase. Again, that's just to keep ahead of all the upgrades, and we heard a report on those. We're moving forward on purchasing property to expand the wastewater plant, and then there are just a bunch of easements that are necessary for the actual putting the sewer lines. You need a legal, I don't know what to call it, just to have a legal right to the land above the pipes so that the property owner doesn't build on top of your pipes, and then it's easy to get to them in the case of needing to repair them. We awarded the O.B. Nelson basketball court project. That is being, again, funded entirely by donation from private donor and a little bit from the Park and Rec Foundation, so it's not coming out of the city coffers, which is great, and it's going to be lit at night. It's going to be one full court basketball with the fence.
Nice.
It's going to be right near the skate park out at O.B. Nelson. So that park has really taken off. I've also heard that the local baseball groups want to put in a couple new diamonds out there. So it's really it's going to be more full than it's ever been.
Sweet.
So it might be minus a pool, but it's plus all these other things.
Plus a lot of other stuff.
Yep.
So.
All right. We also entered a service agreement with French Rent-A-Car on the Highway 1 traffic study. So the mayor and John Meyer from French Rent-A-Car had met with the DOT a few months ago, presented a plan for making Highway 1 south from Fillmore to in front of the hospital 3 lanes, just like Burlington is. So 2 lanes going each direction and a turn lane in the middle. And that will make it safer and make traffic flow more smoothly. I think most people coming off the bypass come off at the south entrance. So it's kind of become our main entrance to town. And with the new development out there, and if there's more new development out there, it's important to have a safer street. At the intersection of Libertyville Road and Highway 1 South, there's talk of a roundabout, which, according to what I understand, they're very popular in Europe, and they're
very Euro.
Well, it helps the traffic flow much better than a 4-way stop. So this study is needed to assess the traffic patterns currently, to assess if a roundabout would make sense, which I'm hoping it will. And we need to move on that before the DOT asks us to move on that before they consider their support. And their support would fund the majority of it. So hopefully we'll get them on board. All right, the other committees we heard from, the Personnel Committee had met twice in closed session to hear from a city employee who had been let go and asked to have that, potentially repealed and rehired, and they decided to uphold the termination after hearing from said employee. I guess I already talked about most of this. Public Safety and Transportation Committee met. We took no action, but we deal with things like, are we going to put back signs where they put the sidewalk by the everybody's parking lot? Well, it would kind of wreck the whole sidewalk. Let's not put them back. Funny little things like that, but they do make a difference. You wouldn't want a sign right in your nice sidewalk. So, And then I gave a little report on the quiet zone and just basically a review of railroad safety. Last Thursday, November 20th, was the second year anniversary of the establishment of our railroad quiet zone in Fairfield. Things have gone well. There have been 2 unfortunate fatalities on the tracks, neither of which would have been avoided in a non-quiet zone. The horns were sounded both times and to no avail. But traffic accidents or close calls, or the police chief talked about they having many fewer incidences of people going around the gate arm, and so it's just not physically possible now in most locations. So talked about the importance of not walking along the railroad tracks, just cross at an at-grade crossing and look both ways twice. This is the advice of the public, of the train safety. I got a little grief for quoting a line that all the time is train time, and the council found that kind of funny, but it just means that even if the gate arms are up, you don't know if a train might be approaching, maybe something's malfunctioning, and that's why slow down, look both ways a couple times, then cross quickly. Safety
first, because if you wait till the last,
it can be a bad situation. The description of what a train to a car is like is what a car would be like to an empty pop can. It's just, you don't want to get hit by a train. It'd be really bad news. Last thing is, last week the city council met for about 5.5 hours. We interviewed 8 candidates via Skype for the city administrator position. We narrowed it down to our top 3 who will be coming to town the first weekend of December. So they'll be here Friday, meet the city department heads, tour the city, take them out to dinner, get to know them a little bit, and Saturday, formal interviews. And we're hoping by that Saturday we will have made a decision and come to some sort of agreement, or maybe by the Monday following.
It's exciting.
And by early January, we'll have our new administrator on the job.
Brand new year, brand new administrator, and we're out of here. We have to, is that it, Michael?
That's it.
Well, thank you, Jason, for being so strong and dropping by when keeping the FMC folks in the visual loop. And all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in. This is James Moore with Michael Halley and Cityscape. That's right, visions for local leadership in Iowa. And there's Talia Winningham, who always liked to say, listen fresh, listen local. This is City Business, and you can catch us, remember, Tuesdays, 12:30, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m., or Mondays at 6:30 a.m. the following. And, well, you have, I guess we have one more to go in December, right?
Yeah, mid-December.
Well, we'll be back then. And don't forget to have a great Thanksgiving. We're thankful that you're listening. Michael, thank you so much for coming in and keeping everybody up to snuff. And I'm going to go whimper and cry now, folks. Keep it tuned right here to solar-powered KRUU-FM. No, FM. Wait a minute.